Somewhere right now, there's a room where something just went wrong. Maybe it's a car accident on a highway and three people are screaming and one person has already unbuckled their seatbelt, checked the rearview mirror, and is calmly calling emergency services while their hands aren't even shaking. Maybe it's a kitchen where a kid just split their forehead open on a counter edge and there's blood everywhere and one parent is frozen and the other one, probably you, has already grabbed a clean cloth, applied pressure, and is speaking in a voice so steady it doesn't sound like it belongs to someone who just watched their child bleed. You've done this before. Not this exact thing, but this exact version of yourself. The one who arrives when the room catches fire. Everyone falls apart. You assemble. And afterwards, when the crisis passes and the shaking finally hits you 3 hours later, when you're alone in the shower, and your hands start trembling for no reason you can explain to anyone, you wonder something you've never said out loud. Was that strength? Or was that something else entirely, wearing strength's face? Because here's the thing, nobody in that room will ever think to ask you. They'll call you solid. They'll say thank God you were there. They'll tell the story later, and you'll be the hero of it. But nobody, not once, will turn to you and say, hey, are you okay? Not after, during, were you actually okay in there? And you won't know what to answer, because honestly, you're not entirely sure yourself. If this video touches a nerve, and by the time it's done it will touch several more, do one thing. Hit like, so this reaches the people who needed to hear this years ago, but nobody ever told them. That's not a small thing. There are two completely different things happening inside the human body that look identical from the outside. Both produce calmness during chaos. Both make you the most functional person in a room full of panic. But one of them is a regulated nervous system, doing exactly what it's supposed to do under pressure. And the other one is a nervous system that left the building. And the fact that nobody taught you how to tell the difference is, frankly, a failure of every psychology class, every self-help book, and every well-meaning person who looked at you during a crisis and said, wow, you're so strong. Let's start with what most people assume is happening. They see you calm during a crisis, and they think emotional intelligence. They think you've got some rare ability to manage your emotions in real time, that you're somehow more evolved, more controlled, more together than the people panicking around you. And some of you are. That's real. A regulated nervous system under stress looks like someone whose prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and impulse control, stays online while the emotional brain screams. Dan Siegel at UCLA calls this operating inside your window of tolerance. A zone where your nervous system can absorb stress without flipping into either hyperarousal, that's the panic, the screaming, the fight-or-flight explosion, or hypoarousal, which is shutdown, collapse, going blank. People inside their window can feel the fear and still think. They're not fearless. They're just wide enough internally to hold the fear and the function at the same time. And that capacity, that width, it's built through secure attachment, through having someone in your early years who co-regulated with you, who showed your nervous system what it looks like to stay present during discomfort, without either exploding or disappearing. That's one explanation, and if it's yours, good, genuinely good. But there's another one, and this is the one that nobody talks about because it looks so similar from the outside that even the person experiencing it can go decades without knowing the difference. Stephen Porges, the neuroscientist who developed polyvagal theory in 1994, mapped out something that changed how we understand the human stress response. Most people know fight or flight. Two options. Danger arrives, your body either fights it or runs from it. But Porges identified a third response that's far older evolutionarily, the dorsal vagal response. Shutdown. Not fight, not flight. Freeze. And here's what almost nobody understands about freeze. It doesn't always look like a deer in headlights. It doesn't always look like someone going stiff and silent in a corner. Sometimes, and this is the part that should genuinely unsettle you, sometimes freeze looks like the calmest person in the room. Because what's actually happening is the nervous system has decided the situation is so overwhelming that the only way to survive it is to pull the consciousness slightly out of the body. Not all the way. You're still functioning. You're still talking. You're still applying pressure to the wound and calling the ambulance and holding someone's hand. But there's a thin pane of glass between you and what's happening. You're watching yourself perform competence from a slight distance. And that distance, that almost imperceptible remove from your own experience, that's not emotional intelligence. That's dissociation. And it works beautifully. until it doesn't. Charles Marmar, at the University of California, San Francisco, studied this in 1994 with emergency responders and trauma survivors. He called it peritraumatic dissociation, dissociation that occurs during the event itself, not after. And his research showed something that reframed the entire clinical understanding of PTSD risk. It wasn't the severity of the event that best predicted whether someone would develop PTSD afterward. It was whether they dissociated during it. The people who stayed present, who felt the full horror in real time, even the ones who screamed and panicked and fell apart, they actually processed the event more completely. Their nervous systems filed it properly. The people who went calm, who floated above it, who performed beautifully in the moment, their nervous systems never fully registered what happened. The memory got stored wrong, fragmented, unfiled, and it came back later, sideways, as nightmares, as hypervigilance, as that weird thing where a car backfires, and your body reacts before your brain even identifies the sound. So how do you actually know which one you are? Because from the inside, they feel almost the same. Here's the distinction, and I want you to sit with this honestly because only you can answer it. When you're the calm one in a crisis, can you feel your body? Not think about your body, feel it. Are your feet on the ground? Can you feel the texture of whatever you're holding? Is there a sensation in your stomach, your chest, your throat? Or is there nothing? Not peace. Nothing. A blankness where the fear should be. Like someone turned the volume knob all the way down on your internal experience, and what's left is just mechanics. Just task after task after task, executed perfectly, felt by nobody. The person operating inside their window of tolerance feels afraid and acts anyway. The person in dorsal vagal shutdown doesn't feel afraid because they're not fully there to feel it. And that difference, quiet as it is, changes everything about what happens to you after the emergency ends. I'm genuinely curious. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever noticed that glass pane feeling? That moment where you're performing perfectly but something inside has gone quiet in a way that doesn't feel like peace? Because what I'm about to explain next depends entirely on whether you see yourself in this or not. Now, where does this come from? Because nobody is born dissociating during emergencies. This is learned. And the classroom is almost always childhood. Vincent Felitti and Robert Anda published the ACE study in 1998 through Kaiser Permanente and the CDC. It remains one of the largest investigations ever conducted into the relationship between childhood adversity and adult health outcomes. Over 17,000 participants. And what they found was that adverse childhood experiences, things like emotional neglect, household dysfunction, a parent who was physically present but emotionally somewhere else entirely, a home where the child had to manage the adult's emotions instead of the other way around. These experiences don't just create difficult memories. They reshape the nervous system's entire operating manual. A child who grows up in an environment where crisis is regular, where the adults are either the source of the chaos or too overwhelmed to contain it, that child's nervous system learns something very specific. It learns that falling apart is not an option. Not because the child is brave, because there was no one there to catch them if they did. So the nervous system adapts. It builds a shortcut. Danger arrives, emotions leave. Not processed, not regulated, ejected. And what replaces them is a preternatural calm that functions like a survival mechanism, but gets labeled by every teacher, coach, and therapist as maturity. You're so mature for your age. You heard that, didn't you? And you nodded and accepted it. Because what else would you call it? You didn't have the language for what was actually happening. You just knew that when things went wrong, something clicked inside you, and you became the most capable person in the room. And you've been doing it so long that it doesn't feel like a response anymore. It feels like identity. It feels like who you are. You're the calm one, the solid one, the one people call at 2 a.m. because they know you'll answer, and they know your voice won't shake. But here's what that costs. And nobody warns you about this part. The nervous system that learned to eject emotions during crisis doesn't have a switch that works only in emergencies. It generalizes. Over time, the calm that served you during the kitchen fire starts showing up during arguments with your partner, during grief, during moments that are supposed to feel like something, and you're standing there aware that you should be feeling it, watching other people feel it, wondering why you're observing your own life, like it's a documentary you're narrating in real time, but never quite starring in. People describe this in therapy all the time. I know I should be sad. I know this is a big deal. Everyone around me is emotional, and I just feel flat. And they assume it means they're cold. That something is fundamentally broken in them, emotionally. It's not. The system that was supposed to protect them during emergencies never fully stood down. The glass pane is still there. Thinner now, maybe, but there. And it shows up in the strangest places. A wedding where everyone is crying, and you're smiling but your eyes are dry, and you're quietly wondering what's wrong with you. A funeral, where you're the one organizing the logistics because someone has to, and feeling things can wait, and then the waiting just never ends. And the most painful part, the part I need to say carefully because I know exactly who's listening right now. The people who operate like this are almost always the ones everyone else leans on. They're the first call, the steady hand, the person who holds the room together, and they do it beautifully. So beautifully that nobody ever thinks to check on them, because why would you check on the person who's fine? They're always fine. That's the whole point. Except fine has a texture when you live inside it long enough, and it feels less like peace and more like a very well-maintained distance from your own life. So what do you actually do with this? Because I'm not going to sit here and tell you to just feel your feelings. That advice is the emotional equivalent of telling someone who can't swim to just get in the water. The nervous system doesn't respond to instructions. It responds to safety, real safety, not conceptual safety, not I know I'm safe, your body knowing it's safe. And there's a difference between those two things that most self-help content will never honestly acknowledge. The shift isn't a decision. It's a process. It starts with the smallest thing, noticing when the glass pane goes up. Not fixing it, not forcing yourself to feel, just noticing. Oh, I left again. That's it. That's the beginning. And over time, slowly, the nervous system starts to learn something it never had the chance to learn when you were young. That it's possible to stay present during discomfort and survive it. That falling apart doesn't mean staying apart. That the room doesn't need you to hold it together every single time. That you are allowed to be a person in your own story, not just the narrator of everyone else's. Your calm was never a flaw. It was the smartest thing your nervous system could have done with what it was given. But you're not in that kitchen anymore. You're not that child anymore. And the version of you that learned to leave the room without leaving the room deserves, after all this time, to finally come back inside and sit down. The shower at 11 p.m., where your hands shake 3 hours too late, that's not weakness. That's your body trying to complete something it wasn't allowed to complete in real time. Let it. Just once. See what happens when you stop being the calm one and let yourself be the honest one instead. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next video connects directly to what we just talked about here. You won't want to miss it.